absolute star. And thank you so much, Miss Steinem, for coming. It's an absolute honor to be able to interview and chat with you.
No, it's an honor for me. And please say Gloria if you don't. Right.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Gloria. Sorry. This is as well. This is Kelly here with me. She's the chair of our subcommittee for women and gender minorities called the Eliz. So and I just decided it'd be great if you could meet her as well just before we get started. Say a few hellos.
Right. Hi, Kelly. Right.
Hi, it is like so incredible to be able to talk with you. Like Jack said, I am chairperson of the Elizabethan Society, which was established in 1905 as like a space for women to have discourse and debate. And we joined up with the University Philosophical Society in the mid 1960s, and since we've also expanded like our focus on issues that affect gender nonconforming individuals as well. And like you are a huge inspiration to like why we exist and why we continue to have like a sphere for discourse, especially like for myself and for my mom. My mom, when she heard that you were going to be like having this award presented to you from the Phil, she actually wrote you a letter for me to read out to you. So I was just wondering if
Sorry, that's lovely.
if you wouldn't mind if I could read that to you.
No, I'd be honored. No, absolutely. 2 generations I'm getting right. That's great.
So she says, Dear Mrs. Steinem, I am thrilled I have the opportunity for my daughter to place this note in your hands. Unfortunately, it is virtually, but it's still like, I'm so glad that I get to share this with you. You have been a great influence on my life ever since I took a Women in the Media class in the 1980s at University of California, San Diego. You opened so many doors for me, not only in real life, but also in my mind. My father never knew what hit him as I changed my vocabulary. Ghost wrote a book on power writing for women and began to understand my own feminine power. I proudly took my womanness into the world, embracing powerful women in my own writing and communication. Your action encouraged me to find my suffragist roots in my great-great-grandmother, to claim my human rights in corporate America, and to raise a daughter who gets to interview you. Thank you so very much for everything you've done to make my world and my daughter a beautiful place for us. Sincerely, Chris Englert.
Oh, that is the ultimate reward. I thank your mom so much. I thank you. I thank her for producing you. I didn't do that. She did that.
I'm so jazzed like to even be talking with you, and like thank you sincerely for everything that you've done.
No, I feel lucky to be able to do it.
Well, thank you again so much for coming. And we may as well get the ball rolling, so to speak. So there's a bit of formalities first. Just want to introduce the award, kind of chat a bit about what we do, and then of course give a short description, of course limited if there's too much to describe, of your life so far and everything you've achieved. So welcome everyone to the first honorary patronage of the 339th session of the University Philosophical Society. We'd like to thank our kind sponsors, EY, for making this and all of our events possible. Before we begin presenting this award to Ms. Steinem, I would like to give a bit of background to the award and what the Phil as an organization endures to achieve. We are the world's oldest student society and have recorded the presence of remarkable members such as Oscar Wilde, Bram Stoker, Samuel Beckett across 380 years of history. Today, we have over 10,000 members from all corners of the globe. Each year, the Council selects a select number of new honorary patrons to the Society based on their significant contribution in their respective fields. These figures include those such as President Joe Biden, Martin Scorsese, Margaret Atwood, Judith Butler, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Al Pacino, Courtney Love, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Nancy Pelosi, Dame Helen Mirren, and many, many more. This year, our council has elected Gloria Steinem to the honor of receiving the Gold Medal of Honorary Patronage for your outstanding contributions to activism, literature, and an infinite amount of fields, too many to mention, really. Gloria Steinem's life is, in fact, beyond description. A journalist, activist, and most of all, an inspiration. She rose to prominence while working as a journalist and columnist, emerging as a key figure within second-wave feminism. She was a co-founder of the Ms. magazine, which was the first national feminist magazine in America, as well as being a co-founder of the National Women's Political Caucus and the Women's Action Alliance. as well as many, many other organizations advancing progression and justice. From exposés of Playboy's predatory practices to marches and protests and campaigns for causes ranging from women's rights to apartheid, all the way to crossing the Korean demilitarized zone as part of a push for peace, she has fought for progression and justice her entire life. We're absolutely honored to have you, and just sorry that we can't give you the award in person. We'll have to post it off, I presume, or figure out the logistics of that. Very sorry we can't hand it to you physically, but it's an absolute honor. Thank you so much for coming.
No, I thank you, and I thank you for that introduction, because it means I have to live a lot longer in order to deserve it, right? Which I plan to do, right?
Yeah. As you should. Yeah, actually, starting on that note, actually, because I've obviously been listening to a lot of your interviews and different podcasts you've done, and your constant drive is really inspirational. So when you've already done so many amazing things, and even when you were, 30, you had done so many amazing things already, more than many people achieve in 3 lifetimes. What has driven you to keep going, keep fighting for more and more progression, even though you've already done so much for the world, and have the kind of motivations behind that kind of changed and evolved over time?
What motivates me is companionship. Here are the two of you who are extending my energy and lifetime, and so many more companions. What energizes me is the fun of seeing how divisions and problems actually can be overcome. But it is the joy of a movement. I mean, the same, it would not be the same joy if I were by myself or with only a few other people. I feel connected to you and others on different continents and different cultures, because we're connected by our purpose, by our joy, and by our belief in the future.
Yeah, very fair, very inspirational too. Actually, follow up on this. I was planning on asking this later, but it kind of ties in well here. I've heard you tell amazing stories about kind of, when you were within second wave feminism, and how you would essentially, the way you kind of spread the movement was just going on marches and say, like, join us, then people would just come along. It sounds, at least to me, as a relatively young person who's only been tangentially involved in different social movements, it sounds so like interpersonal, communal, like you say. Do you fear, or maybe my fear is unfounded, that maybe the way that social media has changed activism has made it a little bit more impersonal, a little bit more cold and maybe corporate?
Well, that's interesting. It has given with one hand and taken away with the other. I mean, it has greatly expanded our ability to talk to large numbers of people in faraway places where, the only thing we have in common is electricity, right? Which we should remember, actually, because we're still divided by lack of electricity from quite a lot of the world. So it is very positive, but on the other hand, we can't confuse talking with doing. The question is, what's the quality of life and the degree of equality of life for the people who are immediately around us and anyone else we can find or anyone else we know. Of course, the fun of it is exactly that too. It's looking at a particular, this is the fun of organizing, looking at a particular problem, inequality, injustice, and figuring out what combination of people and forces and resources could change that. It's kind of addicting, actually. It's because it's so important and so interesting.
Yeah, yes, that's very, very inspirational. Thank you. Yeah, I suppose to kind of circle back to another kind of point of, as opposed to asking about your drive and what kind of keeps you doing so much for the world, kind of asking the flip side of it. because for me, when I was, obviously knew about your life and then researched more and more in depth, and there was some things I didn't know about, which just blew me away. Like someone mentioned the trip to North Korea, and I was like, wait, what? And for me, there's so many things across your life, whether it be the blockbuster expose of Playboy, or that trip to North Korea, or even the sharing the story of your own abortion, or starting women-owned feminist periodical, or even just traveling overseas when you're so young. For me at least, maybe I'm just an overthinker. Do you ever have moments of hesitation or not being sure if you should like follow through with these dreams, these ideas? Moments of thinking about all those kind of negative what ifs, like what if this happens, what if that happens? Because if not, what's your secret? And if so, how did you overcome them? So again, what's your secret, I suppose?
Well, when you say that, it makes me think of my father, actually, who used to say, if you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, it could be wonderful. So it's partly falling in love with possibilities. And I mean, I recognize that I have been able to do that because I don't have a lot of financial responsibilities. I did manage to go to college. English is, maybe the most frequently used language in the world, which is unfair. And so I realize that I have unfair advantages. But I think if we follow our curiosity, the joy of it, working with people we care about, and just satisfaction in the moment, that's probably more helpful than trying to live in the future and say exactly, because we can't know the future. But joy in the moment is irresistible.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I have a few more questions, but I'm conscious of I better not steal all the questions from Kelly. So I may pass over to Kelly for a moment to ask you a question or two, and then we'll kind of bop back before then opening up to the floor. I don't want to steal all of Kelly's material.
Yeah, I actually had a very similar question about social media. I was going to ask, do you feel the rise of social media has like helped or harmed feminist issues? A lot of people say that social media is great because it makes information more accessible, but it can also be a big downfall because of all the misinformation that gets spread. So I was just wondering like how you felt about that.
Well, I think you're right. It's a blessing, but also it can come with punishments. The one that worries me the most is lack of empathy, because I'm told by my scientific friends that in order to manufacture oxytocin, which is the chemical that allows us to empathize with each other. When we see someone having an accident, even if we don't know that person, we have the impulse to help, right? And that is, I think, as I understand it, less likely to be produced online as we are now, rather than present in all five senses. So, I think we need to remember that and continue to use where we are today, you and I on screen, as the reminder of a much bigger story in your life and in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point about the empathy. I think about that a lot, about how they're just like, we say that there's connection, but like how much of that connection is actually there. Yeah, that's really interesting. I also wanted to ask, in regards to the National Women's Political Caucus, they're really involved in like enabling women to run for office and like aiding in the choices for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party even. I was wondering if that if they were involved with Marianne Williamson's campaign or decision to run, because she's kind of up and coming as one of the front runners for the Democratic campaign elections, and I wanted to know, why was someone like her considered? Because if you think about it, she's not a political person the way that Donald Trump was. She's a writer. She's ahead of a few, or she's founded a few organizations, but she's kind of like on the outs of this political sphere. And I was wondering if like the National Women's Political Caucus was conscious of that, if that was like a strategic effort, or if that was like, I don't know, like kind of how did they make that decision, if they are involved at all, and if you know.
The National Women's Political Caucus was really a giant step forward in raising the political profile of women in every party.
Hmm.
Which in those days there were many more Republican feminists as well. So it was an initial step that was very, very important, and it may still exist in some states, but it isn't the national event that it was at its founding. So
Yeah.
as far as I know, we'd have to ask Marianne Williamson, but as far as I know, it didn't play a role in her decision to run.
Do you think like, do you see an opportunity in the future for it to become like a bigger national organization the way it once was? Do you think like that need is still there? Is it necessary for women to have aid and help in running for office? Or do you think like the resources are available to them now because of the work that the National Women's Political Caucus has done?
No, I don't think that women running for political office have the same resources, whether they're financial or access to media. Usually, I mean, there may be an exception here and there, but as you can see by the extreme imbalance of who is in state legislatures and in Congress, it's still very unequal. But to my knowledge, the National Women's Political Caucus played a greater role in initiating the idea and changing consciousness. And now the actual day-to-day work differs according to what party, what state, what city you're in.
Right, right. And then just completely shifting gears for my last question. You founded Miss Magazine because your work originally started as a journalist with notably like the Playboy Bunny expose, which I think is incredible. I like that undercover work that you did was so fantastic. And I don't know if I would have been able to keep my cover in those situations. I was going to ask, once you like set up and established the Miss Magazine, did you find any boundaries to be removed? And did you find any unexpected boundaries that you encountered?
I think perhaps one of the most obvious but least expected is advertising. That advertising was and is necessary as economic support to much of media. And that because women's magazines then, and perhaps to some extent still, were expected to write nicely about advertisers, to praise advertisers, otherwise you didn't get their ads. A standard which would not be the same, say, for news magazines, for Time or Newsweek, or for the New York Times Sunday magazine. Hopefully it's not expected in those places that you have to write nicely about advertised products, which takes away objectivity and accuracy and so on, in order to get those ads. So it was a particular combination of events that created Ms. Magazine, and it still exists online. Feminist Majority still, is its home in California, but I think largely it's been replaced and expanded by online expressions of all kinds.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, like, you think had you had like the reason why the advertisements were expecting you to write positively about them really like created this boundary of like continuing on in the magazine, or like that it was just difficult to receive sponsorships and money through advertisement because you wanted to keep an objectivity in the magazine, but that wasn't available because of the expectations they had for you?
Well, we couldn't. I mean, we finally stopped taking advertising and became a foundation.
Right.
It was the only way to proceed without giving up accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, those are all the questions I have for now. Like, again, thank you so much for like talking to us, and like again, it was like such an honor to interview you, and I hope that.
It's an honor to see you. And if you have something you've just read or watched or something that you think I definitely should, tell me or email me. You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
great.
You can pass anything on through me. I'll
Yeah. I'll have to think of like what I've seen recently, because I'm sure that there's something that you would be really interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh God, I have to think about that now.
No, but I think that's our own media, you know, our own way of recommending to each other.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, actually, pivoting back to Miss Magazine, I believe is within it was the first cover story was that the abortion stories of different people telling stories about the abortions they'd had. And that's also something which was a very big part within the campaign to secure abortion rights, albeit they limited now within Ireland in recent years. So I'd just be curious, because so much of what different social movements have to fight for is that big, widespread legislative or legal change. But it seems like the things which convince people, either which change laws or which normalize the change laws, seem to be those individual stories. So just be curious what your thoughts are on the power of the lives of individuals and how to kind of take that power and turn it into a kind of national, legislative, widespread message.
Well, yes, I think you're exactly right. I mean, it does start in individual lives, and then we understand that it's shared by people we don't know, and ultimately it turns into a movement. So, you know, we want to be able to express ourselves without political censorship. And that is also relevant to if advertisers are limiting the scope of a particular publication, then that's a problem and something that needs changing. So it is like a tree, as I think of it. Social change is like a tree. It doesn't start from the top down, it starts from the bottom up. And the individual need, the individual injustice, then if you speak about it, you discover other people who share some part of it, and acting together, you can change it.
I see. So to continue the metaphor, kind of blooms out. You have the roots of some people discuss it, and then more and more stories come out and convince more and more people.
Yes, and sometimes it's not a particular issue, it's an image. I mean, the fact that we can see people in elected office who are not the usual race or gender or class, then opens up the possibility of political office to a larger number of people.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. Kind of pivoting towards the kind of future or maybe current challenges facing the more broad feminist movement, so to speak. Obviously, not a monolith. I'd be curious, first of all, about, it seems at least that in the past, no matter where you were, at least within one country, everyone was broadly fighting for the same battles, making people kind of believe in the same fundamental equalities. Whereas now there seems to be, depending on the country or even within the region, or sometimes a city versus rural areas can flip, where one's more progressive and one's more conservative and vice versa. Where in some places, it seems like we should be pushing more and more for, you know, even more progressive change, better policies, building on what we already have. But in other places, we're playing defense. And I'm just curious how you think women should kind of strike that balance. What's the best way to go about tailoring your messaging when it also has to still apply to everyone?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to apply to everyone. It has to apply to the people who need to act. So in Scandinavian countries that don't have the same racial diversity, say, as other parts of the world, the message may be organic and therefore not quite the same as in a country like the United States or India, where there's more diversity of groups within it. I think the model is, if we're talking to a group of friends, if they've had the same experience we have had, we speak in a certain way, but if there's a wide variety of experience among our friends, we probably speak in a different way in order to make a human connection, or in an additional way.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Just for the viewers as well, I'm just going to ask 3 more questions from me. And then unless Kelly has another question.
Don't hesitate to give me answers. I can use answers.
I think far less, if any. But then as well, after that, we'll turn to the audience. So if you want to, you can already start popping in questions into the YouTube live chat, and I'll be monitoring that for them to pass on to Gloria, and then ask them myself. But before I turn over to the live chat, I'm curious as well, again, on that broader notion of the kind of current challenges facing the feminist movement, with the rise of trans exclusive radical feminists and discourse which emphasizes gender as a structure, coming both from certain feminist circles, but also from certain like queer and LGBTQ circles. I'm curious how you believe we should craft feminist messaging going forward into the future on the matter of gender, and of course on the matter of gender abolition, and how we kind of go about still bringing everyone on board.
Well, I don't know that we should have a case of the shoulds. I think we are probably at our best when we're speaking based on our own experience and assuming that others have had different experiences, and that will expand, complement, diversify our message. About gender, I don't know. Sometimes I think the world is divided into 2 kinds of people: those who divide the world into 2 and those who don't. Right. So it's not the same as in most interpretations as a physical difference of sex. Gender tends to be more about the culture, and therefore more changeable.
Well, thank you. So just 2 more questions from me then. I'm really curious about this one because I also know you said a few kind of very funny but also very powerful things about it before. And it's something I'd be interested in as someone who's studied a bit of sociology. But you were, of course, essentially practicing what we nowadays call intersectional feminism before the term was widespread, used at all. Do you think that concepts such as intersectionality, when formally defined as opposed to kind of more culturally or people telling their own individual stories, is it useful for those academic definitions to come out as someone who's experienced activism maybe before the proliferation of all these kind of academic terms? Are they merely a distraction, or maybe pointless confusion, or maybe even worse? Or do they hold a lot of power to make people understand things?
Well, no, intersectional and other terms were not part of my experience when I was coming up, to put it mildly, in the 1950s. And I'm glad that they exist and are meaningful in a positive way. It seems to me that the word feminist is, or women's liberationist, or whatever term you want to be, is itself universal, because you don't have to be female to be a feminist. You can be a male and be a feminist. You don't have to be a particular social group or race to be a feminist. It just, according to the dictionary, you just believe that people are people and not valued according to or divided by the idea of gender.
I see. Yeah. How do you think as well, in places where people do fundamentally believe maybe there's more what we would call regressive views, that people are defined by mere facts of luck, past this lives of individuals, when people still won't even listen to that, how do we go about convincing them, bringing them on board to, if not make them vote with us or march with us, at least make them not march against us?
Mm. Well, it's pointing to a part of reality that illustrates what we think needs illustrating. For instance, if we're talking about shared parenthood, we can easily see that men love their children, fathers love their children as mothers love their children. Not all of either is responsible. I mean, we can see that nurturing unique individual human beings with love and care is something that everyone can do, and not everyone does.
Yeah, very fair. So kind of attaching it to their values and making them realize it's what they maybe should be doing in their own opinion. I know I said 3 questions and I've already asked 3, but I'm going to be cheeky and go for another before I pass on to the audience. And it's just the idea of, I've heard you talk before about the kind of maybe false separation between different movements, whether it be the queer movement, women's rights movements, or environmental movements, when they're all essentially fighting for progression and a change away from the status quo. Why do you think it is that this kind of fracturing or splintering has occurred? And how do you suppose we kind of bring everyone back together? How do you suppose we kind of resolve this issue where maybe people who should be working together are off doing their own thing?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but it may or may not be fracturing. I mean, it is not fracturing to speak of different experiences due to race and racism within the women's movement. It's unifying. It's not fracturing to question gender and gender roles. It may be equally unifying. It's probably usually the result of how we phrase it and how we regard or welcome or fail to welcome other people into the achievement of this goal. I mean, clearly men can be and are feminists. Clearly people who are heterosexual can and should support the idea of people who fall in love with members of the same gender. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's sort of just allowing and supporting each individual, their authentic decision, representation, and way of life.
Yeah, so kind of making it clear that we're all fighting for the same thing, and can all be involved in that fight. I think we're gonna pass over, unless I'm mistaken, sorry. I think we're gonna pass over to the YouTube chat now. And Kelly, if you want, you can pick out a question first.
Yeah. So Annika says, thank you so much for addressing us. I was wondering, what advice do you have for dealing with burnout as an activist, especially in the age of social media?
Well, burnout is to be respected, because it means probably that you've been spending way more time on external action, helping others, than giving yourself the rest, the humor, the music, the dancing, whatever it is that you crave and deserve. So setting an example of masochism, I would say, is not helpful to the movement. You need to pay attention to your own needs too.
Right.
Very fair. Actually, on that note as well, what you touched upon earlier about kind of having joy in the present and living in it. This question is going to hit you with either side of the present. What, if anything, would you have done differently? Or is there anything you wish that you maybe had done that you haven't gotten the chance to do yet? So kind of looking back to the past, but also maybe future chances to do it. So sorry to take out of the present, but yeah.
No, well, when you say that, because I'm a writer, the first thing that comes to mind is that I haven't written enough, because a movement is precious in every way, but it also gives you an excuse, not to write what's difficult or do whatever else may be difficult for you. So we have to keep in mind that a movement is supposed to help maximize our own dreams and our own talents as well as those of others.
Do you want to tennis this, by the way? You can.
Yeah. Let's go back and forth for the
Yeah.
questions. Okay. So the next question is actually from my mom because she's watching the live stream.
Where is your mom?
She is currently back in the States, but she's in Washington right now. But I'll see her soon for Mother's Day. She asks, why do we need to identify gender at all? Do you see a post-gender identification world?
Probably, because gender is an invention, unlike sex or to some extent what we call race, at least the amount of melanin in our skin or whatever it is, is more factual probably than gender. So yes, perhaps we will head into a future where it's not your gender but your name.
Yeah.
That's most important.
It is a tough question. It's actually one of the debates that we had earlier this year, that Jack and I spoke on opposite sides in. It is
so how was the debate? How did you phrase the debate?
The motion was said as this house would abolish gender. Yeah. And like I spoke in opposition of it and Jack spoke in proposition of it. And I think, did we swap it? No.
I think I was opposition, you were proposition, no?
Maybe the phrasing was this house would abolish gender then.
Yeah, it would abolish gender. This has gender abolition. Yeah.
It was actually quite difficult for me to speak in that debate because I have like very conflicting feelings on the topic. Like I feel like I could argue for either side. And I think I ended up saying like gender gives us an identity and an identity should be respected. So that would be why I wouldn't abolish gender. And then Jack was speaking on to abolish gender and they said
it is a fascinating issue.
No, it is interesting, but in both of you were serving an important function in explaining and personifying that gender is a social construct.
Yeah, exactly. On a bit of a separate note, you obviously asked Kelly earlier for any media recommendations. Someone in the chat is wondering if you have any media recommendations for all of us. What have you been reading, watching, listening to?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, the truth of my life is I spend so much time reading my email, that and reading at books in order to discover, some research that I need, that I can't easily, that I don't want to give up this opportunity to recommend a book, but maybe I'll pass it on to the two of you. Do you have a book you would recommend?
I was thinking about it since you've asked. There's a great book called Girls to the Front about the Riot Girl movement in the 90s and early 2000s. And I'll have to look up the authors. but it's called Girls to the Front. It's really, really good. It's kind of like it explains how like the third wave feminism moved in with the Riot Girl movement, and then how it kind of all fell apart because everyone started like began thinking about different ways to express their belief in how feminism should be like moving forward and stuff. It's really, really good.
Oh, well, that's interesting. But maybe that was the problem. The shoulds, they got a case of the shoulds, as opposed to allowing and encouraging each person or group to express themselves.
Yeah, it's Girls to the Front by Sarah Marcus.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my answer is much more stereotypical because I'm actually currently studying a module on like the philosophy of gender and sexuality. And recently for reading that, I had to reread The Second Sex, and it still just blows my mind so much of the historical knowledge, both in the history of philosophy, but then also just, you know, certain societies that were maybe matriarchal or where gender was entirely differently constructed with respect to sex and they didn't correlate as directly. And then all the more kind of phenomenological and existential aspects of it all. It just blows my mind every time I get a different chapter to read in a course. So I can't not say it. It's a very easy answer. But
I mean, Simone de Beauvoir and other profound questioners have a lot to teach us still.
Yeah. A very lazy answer, but I think I couldn't not say it. Moving on to other questions in the chat. Actually, sorry, Kelly, it's you up next. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm bad at playing tennis. My bad.
Blessing says, did you ever experience any moments of doubt early on in your career? What was your guiding motivation for withstanding the tougher parts of navigating yourself in the world of activism?
Well, I've certainly experienced periods of doubt that we could move forward or that it was possible to work together in diversity or whatever it is. But actually speaking personally, I've been helped by Native American culture here, the cultures that were here before Europeans showed up, and by people like Wilma Mankiller, who was the chief of the Cherokee Nation, and so on, because gender didn't necessarily exist. I mean, Wilma got the name Mankiller because it was a historical role assigned to somebody who guarded the tribe. And whether male or female, that was the name and the role. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when we look at institutions that were not determined by race or gender, it's very helpful, I think, in getting our minds beyond those limits.
Yeah. In class, we often talk about how like Western concepts of gender and sexuality have like taken over the indigenous concepts of race and sexuality and gender, and how they've like definitely pushed them down and silenced it, basically. So this like Western ideal is at the forefront.
Yeah. I think there's also I believe in like pre-colonial Philippines as well. There's groups known as like Bayogs, I may be mispronouncing it, but who are essentially, you know, fully male at birth with respect to sex, but then would essentially operate within society within the kind of feminine gender role, and it was just completely delinked, and that was a fully accepted possibility, which also shows that kind of how narrow that Western conception is, like you would say. Turning a little bit.
I just hope it was free will.
I believe it mostly was. Yeah. Right. Turning back to that, I guess more different context. There's kind of two more maybe less optimistic questions or questions about, you know, maybe backlash that you've talked about before to the movement. First of all, do you think, Shane asked, do you think that the rise in the popularity of people such as Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson is indicative of a weakening of the feminist movement?
Well, you'll have to describe the chief characteristics in those cases for me to know.
They would both essentially have very negative descriptions of women. Saying that they would is always date up, or not, essentially making them sound very materialistic, not like actual human beings at all, very misogynistic talking points, and then have absolutely massive male and especially young male fan bases.
They frame their misogyny and sexism in a way that like they create a persona of like, I'm going to talk about men's health, men's mental health. And so they'll say something like, women are users and like an alpha male will never let a woman push them around. Stuff like that. And they'll say something like, being pushed around by a woman is actually detrimental to like a man's mental health. And like, men need to be the provider, they always need the provider. They frame it as like putting women down as a way to better a man's self. And so I think they appeal to a lot of, yeah, it's really, really
I didn't know it was that bad, so thank you for
yeah, I think the reason why they have really big young boys, like young audiences of boys and young men, young adults, I think the reason why they appeal to it is because that's such a vulnerable position in your life. And you just want to be told that like things are okay and things are going to work out. And the way they like twist it is very concerning.
Well, it's twisting, and it's also turning them against their mothers and their sisters.
Yeah.
People they love and depend on. I mean, it's crazy per se.
Yeah. The other fascinating thing about it, and why I think, at least hopefully, the broader feminist movement should kind of, in time, if people are receptive to the message, realize how wrong these people are, is they'll often literally say, it's unfair. Us men are expected to, work hard, spend all day, and then not show any emotion. And what if we wanted to? And what they're describing there is, of course, gender, and things which feminists would say, yeah, no, that shouldn't be the case at all. So it's almost a parody at this stage when you listen to those figures.
No, I mean, one of the earliest expressions of the here in this country, in the United States, the feminist movement for children was a record and then a television show called Free to Be You and Me. And there was a song sung by Rosie Greer, who was, I don't know if you remember him, but he was an enormously tall, strong, wonderful football player, singing It's All Right to Cry. So little boys understood it was all right to cry, right? So the movement is actually the contrary of that set of assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. Moving to, I suppose, more substantial concerns, because of course their fan bases are concerning, but there's obviously levels to the different kinds of backlash currently being experienced. And sorry, Kelly, I know I'm doing the double barrel, but then I'll go back to you for two.
Okay.
I did a false serve, I guess. I'm not good at the tennis references. But yeah, more troubling concern with the okay, thank you. With the recent overturning of Roe versus Wade, should we be concerned about the future of feminism, or should we hope? Where do you find hope for a future when it seems like we're in some places moving backwards?
We should be concerned about the makeup and who appoints the Supreme Court. I mean, the huge majority of Americans, like other countries, believe in reproductive freedom, that it's up to the person whose body it is to decide how our bodies are used. And the challenges have come because of patriarchy, and in this country also profoundly because of racism. We are just at a point now in which the majority of the country of the United States is becoming people of color when it has been white in the past. And this has excited in some people a fear of this change, when it seems to me, a fine change. Why not? We're going to identify with the rest of the world better. We'll have better food. I don't know, but it has brought movements like you will not replace us. which is essentially usually a racist cry.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of dog whistles that are going on lately.
Fortunately, dogs know better.
Yeah. Kind of like piggybacking onto that question, Inez asks, what feminist initiatives in politics do you think are most important to pay attention to right now as young women, and how can we remain productive in participating in active feminism?
Well, first of all, I trust the judgment of the questioner, because she is in the particular situation, and her instincts about what's possible and helpful are the point. That's what a movement is for.
Mm.
Obviously, we are one of the few democracies in the world. We may be the only one who's never had a female chief of state. I mean, we should, Hillary Clinton should have been, many others should have been, but we haven't achieved that yet. We haven't got past female vice chair, and we've only had one man of color as a chief of state. So we're clearly an imperfect democracy.
Yeah, right. And then Liam says, thank you for the address, Gloria. As the women's movement changes in structure and style with every new wave, how do you think that the legacies of past influential feminists can be respected over time?
I don't know. I just hope that people find whatever is useful or not useful in whatever we've done. There's nothing unchangeable or sacred about it. We were and are responding to particular circumstances. Future feminists are responding to somewhat changed and sometimes the same circumstances. But I would just say we love you. We who have been active in the past are so knocked out and loving and grateful, and have you marching into the future and making it better.
That's great. That's so great to hear. Because I think I personally, and I think everyone who has been involved in the Liz, we respect all the work that you've done so much, and it's so comforting to hear that it goes both ways, and hopefully we can do right by you guys and continue on in a meaningful way.
Yeah, we're here. I mean, we're here to support you. That's our purpose.
That's lovely. Thank you for that.
Moving on to a different question, kind of touching on that idea of different past scholars and writers. And this is from Alana Maxwell. Audre Lorde wrote about a little on the rage women feel towards each other as a kind of internalized misogyny. What do you think is the way to overcome this internalized misogyny?
Well, there are probably many different ways, activist ways, but probably mainly it comes from understanding that they're destructive to us. How would we feel if the same amount of misogyny for some different reason was directed at us? So if we want the positive to grow rather than the negative, we have to focus on the positive and reinforce and praise people for the positive.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm conscious we've taken time up for about an hour, so I may pivot away from the audience questions now, so we can get to absolutely everyone's, and kind of greedily give myself and Kelly the chance to ask one more, if there is one. I'll start off with myself.
Or feel free to give me an answer. I mean, I can totally use.
Well, maybe I'll package this one with a bit of an answer.
Okay.
So you've talked a lot before about how you started off wanting to be a writer or a dancer, the two things where you don't need a voice or you don't have to speak. But obviously now you've spoken at so many different marches, at different conferences. We're honored to hear you speak here today. So you're obviously someone who's found your voice. And but we're ultimately a debating society within subcommittees who try to reach that out for different groups, or for different ways of debating, different kinds of engaging in discourse. Do you think kind of open, really just trying to speak, trying to engage in discourse is the way for people to find a voice, or did you find it just by listening to your own?
No, I suspect, I mean, we are social creatures and we learn in social ways. So understanding that my chance for learning is hugely diminished if I don't listen, hello, is a clearly selfish reason to become a listener. Also, to put it another way, if we want a big democracy, we have to start with a little democracy, which means that if we're sitting in a circle, everybody gets to talk at least once and everybody has to listen. You know, it's the microcosm of what we hope for as a macrocosm.
Very fair, very fair. Yeah, we obviously absolutely agree with the importance of discourse. And then now I have a great excuse as well for not giving any answers, because I'm just making sure I listen to the answers you have.
No,
Yeah, no,
have
yeah,
your own.
yeah. Very fair, very fair. Do you do you have a question at all, or?
Yeah, just like in the last few days, Elon Musk announced that he was stepping down as head of Twitter, which in my opinion is long overdue. But it's kind of come after like a severe like tank in Twitter's credibility and like profitability, and just like he's really messed up the forum that Twitter once was. And he announced that as he was stepping down, he would put in a woman as a head of the corporation. And this is a phenomenon that I've seen a couple of times, and just recently encountered in this article that I was reading, that there's a phenomenon called the glass cliff, where after a male CEO has kind of tanked a company, they'll put a woman in charge or even a person of color in charge. And when the company inevitably goes under, the person of color or the woman in charge will get blamed for the failure that it was. Or there's like rare chances where the woman or person of color in charge like really turns around the company and like really does well despite all odds. And so they call this phenomenon like the glass cliff. And I think do you see any other kind of phenomenon like the glass ceiling, the glass cliff, that you think we should be aware of, that we should work towards changing, that is like notable in your experiences that you've had?
Well, you know, it's so situational in each case that it's kind of hard to predict. But it seems to me in your recital of the situation that the problem is that the Elon Musk or the particular person had the power to choose the next person rather than allowing a more democratic way of allowing of talent to emerge. It's the power to choose. I mean, if we think about it from a government and democracy point of view, we don't want a president to be able to choose the next president, right? We want the whole population to have some voice and choice in this. And I would say the same is true in the example that the corporate example that you cite.
Yeah. I think it definitely goes back to your point originally about like how we can kind of defeat the internalized misogyny that some women feel is by having a democratic stance on issues that affect feminism and feminist issues. Like I do really agree with that point.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I might trouble you again for any last minute media recommendations or even good emails to read.
Oh yeah. Alana Maxwell said "Sister Outside" by Audre Lorde was also a good one.
Yes, Audre Lorde is one. Anything by Audre Lorde is a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much again for coming in and giving us I think just over an hour of your time. I was a bit cheeky with it. Yeah, it's an absolute honor to be able to chat with you. And yeah, thank you so much. And we'll have to make sure we get that award sent out.
It's lovely to see you on this screen. I hope I see you in real life sometime. That would be great.
Yeah, well, you can always come and collect the award in Dublin whenever you want if the post doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be more than happy to receive you.
We could personally deliver it to you. Just like a nice golden box.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever works best.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.